click record. We'll see what happens. All right. So, Sherry, get us back on track. What were we talking about when the internet broke? You're muted, Sherry. Did you mute yourself?
How about now?
Yeah, there we go. Now. We got you.
I don't know how to use Blab. This is my first time.
So hey, real quick,
Sherry, welcome to the Blab community.
Yeah. So real quick for everybody who just jumped in, Brittany broke Google so that we had to go jump and try Blab. Just kidding. But for the Blab community that's here,
hashtag kidding not.
Yeah. We are hashtag CMGR Hangout. We're actually one of the OG original Hangouts. We've been hanging out on Twitter for. Do you know? See, Sherry's got poor internet signal. But Sherry, do you know about how many years? Is it like 3 years, 4 years?
I think 3.
Yeah, 3. So yeah. Anyways, we were actually talking to Brittany. We had a topic about community growth. Then the internet broke, so we moved over here to Blab, and it looks like it's working good. So hey, everybody! Wow, this is so crazy having everyone chatting in the same monitor for me. So, Dom, what freaking question were we on when the internet broke?
I think we were actually talking about, last I knew, we were talking about like ways to get veterans involved.
Okay, so let's just jump ahead to question number 4 since it's 1:44. So hopefully Carrie's following along on Twitter. So question 4 is, how do you help early adopters adjust to newbies on their turf? So how do you help early adopters adjust to newbies on their turf?
I think that one of the things you really have to think about with that is you can't try to go too quick. You really have to, a lot of the times, like Sherry was talking, for instance, she's searching on different places like Twitter and Facebook and, reading articles and that kind of stuff. Always try to make first contact where you see somebody and then sort of like test the waters as to moving them to what your preferred platform of choice is. That's, I think, the biggest thing, because while people are excited for new communities, they hate change. And if it's hard for them to understand where they're coming from or where they're going, then they're not going to do it as well. So I think that's one point, at least for me, is pretty important. What do you say, Brock?
I'm still getting used to this. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. Sorry. I think you're right. And I think that you just have to give the veterans opportunities to do that. So it's, and it really, sometimes veterans are not as involved as they were in the beginning. And that's really hard too, because as the communities grow, they feel like there are just too many posts and too many notifications. So they're not checking in as often. So you just have to keep, on the content side, creating content that'll bring people back and maybe tagging them and do like throwbacks. Throwback Thursdays are always fun for that. And just making sure that you are aware of who your veterans are and what their specialties are and what they offer. So even if they can't be in every conversation, you can get them back when a relevant conversation comes up. We've done that a lot in the Google Small Business community, and we do it with Meshfire too. So it's just a matter of making sure you're aware of the nuances of your members as much as possible and engage them in a way that makes sense to them.
Cool. Sherry, by the way, one of the I think this is a feature of Blab, which is cool, is because your internet is a little bit low, it's actually prioritizing your sending versus your receiving, so that everyone viewing can pay attention. I want to quick bring in Brittany asked a question in the chat about, do you ever feel users are resistant to growth when the community feels like a family? And I would say almost all the time, right? Because especially anything that has rapid growth, your core group of people, like especially if the community starts changing, right, which is almost inevitable. Things are going to change, old habits will die, that sort of thing. I think what ends up happening is, it's easy to remember how it used to be, and for, small little clicks to form, things like that. And so suggestion is how to handle those feelings. I think, I think really, you have to make a decision at points on how much you want to cater to the initial group of people, whether they are the people who are right for the platform or for the community, or if they were just there first. So I think, sometimes you'll see, especially with the early adopters, right? Early adopters jump from community to platform to platform. That the whole idea of early adoption is somebody who really feeds off of the fact that something's new and shiny, and a lot of times they're just looking for that new thing. And so, with brand new communities, I think sometimes you have to really weigh just, are these the people that are taking me to the next level? If so, you have to figure out ways to make them happy. So.
And I think you also have to recognize that it happens, like you have to be very, very upfront and honest with these people, that are there, and just be like, it sort of reminds me, it's like what a parent would say to a kid when they're pregnant with the second child. And it's like, this doesn't mean we love you any less. It just means that we have more, more to the family, and anything in community management, I always think of it as, like when people are like, oh, it would suck if this happened, it would suck if this happens. Well, it happens that, things like that always happen. You have the opportunity to view it as an opportunity, as a chance for growth. And as the community manager, it's really your job to, I hate using the word spin, but it's your job to spin that in the way that it should be. Lead the conversation. Because, if you don't, somebody will. And if that someone is a negative voice, then people are going to jump onto that. So, you can get in front of it and say, yeah, it might mean that you for this community example, we were talking with Brittany. It might mean that Brittany's not going to jump on as many blabs or is going to be in yours as often. But, that doesn't mean necessarily that she's not going to still remember you from the early days and be like, hey, you think that you might be able to do something for me? And do you think you could jump in and say, hey, welcome to Blab, that sort of a thing? Those types of opportunities really present themselves. So I think it's just trying to figure out a way to spin it in that direction.
Yeah. Also I think, getting just kind of bringing us back to question 4 about early adopters and getting them to be okay. And of newbies on their turf. I think that early adopters are often people who also really want to help, right? Mm-hmm. One of the traits of an early adopter is someone who wants to be somebody who is an expert or an authority on a subject, right? And so often they're very helpful people, helpful community members. And so I would say you also just have to provide them the way to help and encourage it. Because I think naturally they'll want to.
You're muted, Sherry. Sherry.
Sherry's muted.
She was going. I could tell. I could see in her eyes. It was a good point. She had the head cock a little bit.
I know she did that.
Still muted. Yeah. Still muted.
Yeah, she'll figure it out. All right. Well, she figures out her audio. Oh, there we go.
There it is.
Oh, welcome.
It said not muted the entire time. Yeah. Anyway, what I was trying to say was early adopters do get clicky though, and that's where the trouble comes in. Is you have people who are so proud of the good old days when there were only 900 people at the conference or whatever, and they reminisce about that, and they feel proud of being an early adopter. And it's not that they don't like the newbies; it's that they want them to know that they've been around and that they were here first. And that is more of the feeling that I think that is harder to combat while welcoming newbies and getting them involved, which is where the recognition comes in, I think, not at the expense of newbies not being recognized too, but celebrating like the anniversaries of them with the community or the ways that they've matured and grown up through the community, whether they're now speaking about your product or whatever. And recognizing that growth path so that they're still getting recognition for having been there for a long time, knowing their stuff, whatever it is, at the same time as involving them and being like, hey, like it's actually a good thing to have new people here. It's actually a good thing that more and more people are using our product and are a part of our community because we can do X, Y, and Z so much more because of it. And it's just kind of educating them on that and encouraging them and kind of getting that message across.
Yeah. So question number 5, as we're rolling into the end of the show here, is how do you balance helping newbies with engaging veterans? So I think we talked about this numerous times, but where is the balance? Any thoughts, Brock? Any thoughts on the balance?
It's the same as any kind of balance, and when it comes to that, so one of the things that we do, like that I make sure we do across any community that I work with, is that any kind of engagement plan we have is equal across the board. And that gets built into whether when we're just starting out or we're scaling, because veterans will have questions too. And they'll come in and ask questions, and we want to encourage them to ask questions because whatever it is that they're asking or they're offering will be relevant to newbies. It's kind of like with every question they ask, they're creating evergreen content for us. So we want to make sure that we can use it and we are encouraging it in a way that creates the engagement. So I think that one way, and I feel like I've said this 3 times today, but it's effective when you are welcoming new members, tagging in new, veterans that will be relevant and can answer that question. And you are that's not only bringing them back for engagement, but that's one way of recognizing their expertise, being like, hey, you're asking about this, so-and-so, and this other person in the community who've been with us, they are experts, and I'm sure they'll have great insight. And the way, that's a nod to them, to their expertise, to the fact that you value them. And even if they haven't maybe participated in the community for a while, you are saying, in a way, hey, we still know you're there. We still appreciate you. We know you're busy, but look, this is what we think of you. So I think it just has to be built into the engagement and kind of from the start, recognize that that's what you're going to need to do and make sure that it scales in a way that makes sense and that won't discriminate against anybody.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's where, my favorite phrase is just Tom Sawyer that shit. That's the key to balance. If you're a sole community manager or have limited resources, is to get that community whitewashing your fence, to get them welcome each other, to really be proud of doing all the different little jobs and wherever they're comfortable or they're having fun and just really empowering them. And then you have to then you worry less about the balance if you're just sitting back and making sure everyone's having a good time.
And that's the cool thing too, because the scalability of that, you're able to sort of dream a little bit bigger when things like that happen. What can my community actually do? What can we actually have happen? Because you then have a list of 25 community members that you go, hey, if I asked them to do this, wouldn't that be really awesome? And that it wouldn't take pulling teeth. They would do it, and they would do it for you in a heartbeat. And then, for some of us that work, sort of more agency side, you have clients that are paying you to manage these communities. Then you're able to really blow them away when you're look at this, and I have X amount of videos, or look at all these stories, these screenshots that I have. And you're asking those people on the backside, but they're doing it because they do it, and then newbies start to do it. And then it really snowballs into something pretty awesome. I keep going to try to mute myself after I talk, but I've realized we're not on Google Hangouts and we're just on Blab, so I'm going to need to type quiet.
I'm using my hardware mute a lot. So all right, guys, to wrap things up with 4 minutes to go, it looks like there's still people actually over on Twitter saying, "Okay, it just ended. That's weird." So I've been tweeting a few people, letting them know to come over. They can watch the end here.
One thing I'm going to do before we completely end it, I'm going to jump just so Brittany can get in the last little bit of this.
Okay, awesome.
All right, so
Come on in, Brittany, for our last question. Let's see. So open seat. Let's see if she's maybe she's not listening. All right. Well, I'm going to just say this last question here, which is, what other tips do you have for embracing community growth? And I really think that's all about you as the community manager embracing, as well as the people around you.
Sorry, I'm just reading the comments and the questions. I think that it's one of the cool things we do is, as a community manager that I like doing is recognizing milestones, because that's also kind of like give yourself a nod as well as thanking your members who've been there from the beginning, being like, hey, we just reached like 50,000 members. Thank you for all of you. Like, one of the things we did was we did a picture of like a map of the US, and we're like, tag which state you're in, like tag yourself in the picture. And we had a lot of people engage with that. So it's and it's important as you're embracing growth and recognizing the members to remember to give yourself props too, which a lot of, as community managers, we don't do because we love what we do, but recognize the fact that you are part of the reason that this community is growing in the positive way that it is. So if you're the sole community manager, just remember that you're part of it. And if you're part of a team, like you guys are doing this great thing, and that'll actually lead to a better embracement of change, because you're like, hey, this is awesome. Like, let's see what else we can do to make it better, and how else we can engage our members. So I think remember to give yourself congrats as well, because you did it.
Share any thoughts?
I think I've pretty much shared most of my thoughts on it. It is a real struggle that we have, which I can relate to Brittany on when we were talking earlier, just about balancing early adopters and newbies and helping to still have that sense of family, that sense of a close group of people, at the same time as growing thousands, hundreds of thousands, and whatever, millions of people around the world. It's hard, but I think someone once told me, if you basically, like, your ability to feel connected ends somewhere around 500 people. Don't quote me on that. Someone told me this. I never researched it. But if you help people connect to that amount of people, then they're going to feel full of connections anyway. And that's really all that you have to help them do. And from there, like, that continues to network out and grow and scale as they get to know more people and they get to know them. And, like, all you can do is set an example with those, like, 500 people that you feel close to. That sounds really weird, but you know what I mean? Well, and then just let them, like, scale it out to their connections as well, right? Like, be the example.
Yeah.
Yeah, wherever you read it was right, because LinkedIn maxes out at 500 and then goes 500 plus. Mm-hmm. There's science behind it.
LinkedIn obviously knows.
Yeah,
them.
I trust them. Come on, that's all.
Must be the authority.
Yeah, their job is.
Yeah. I think as far I had a thought on embracing. I think I just lost it though. I know. So celebrate. I think to celebrate will help everyone embrace. And so maybe, that's hey, we've hit this milestone, or hey, we're here now. Or as we talked earlier on the show, just those small celebrations and recognizing and everything else. But if you make sure to celebrate, I think more people will embrace, because who doesn't like to celebrate? So.
Yep.
Cool.
Agreed.
All right. Well,